Hello, fellow gardeners. Stop wasting your time and space on traditional composting. In this video, we're proving that the future of healthy soil lies in a completely different direction: fermented solids. Discover how to create incredibly nutrient-dense amendments for your garden, faster and easier than you ever thought possible, all without the need for a single compost pile. The great compost lie. For decades we've been told that the path to garden success runs directly through a steaming pile of decomposing organic matter in our backyards. But here's the truth that nobody wants to talk about. Traditional composting isn't always the miracle solution it's cracked up to be. If you've ever dealt with the overwhelming stench of a poorly maintained compost pile wafting through your yard on a hot summer day, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That smell isn't just unpleasant. It's a sign that your compost pile has gone anaerobic in all the wrong ways, creating methane and attracting every fly, rodent, and raccoon within a 5-mile radius. Beyond the odor problem, traditional composting demands precious real estate that many of us simply don't have. Urban gardeners and those with smaller yards face an impossible choice: dedicate a significant portion of their outdoor space to a compost bin, or give up on creating their own soil amendments entirely. Then there's the labor involved, the constant turning, the careful monitoring of moisture levels, the green to brown ratio calculations that would make a mathematician's head spin, and after all that work, you're still waiting months or even years for finished compost that may or may not have the nutrient density your plants actually need. What if I told you there's a revolutionary approach that sidesteps all these problems while delivering superior results? That's where fermented solids enter the picture, changing everything we thought we knew about creating nutrient-rich soil amendments. Unlocking fermented solids. The secret science. Fermented solids represent a fundamentally different approach to breaking down organic matter, one that harnesses the power of controlled anaerobic decomposition rather than the aerobic processes that govern traditional composting. In your compost pile, aerobic bacteria require constant oxygen to break down materials, which is why you're told to turn that pile regularly. But fermentation takes a different path entirely, using specific strains of beneficial anaerobic bacteria and yeasts that thrive in oxygen-poor environments. These microorganisms don't just break down organic matter, they transform it through a process that preserves nutrients rather than releasing them into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. The microbial magic happening in fermented solids is nothing short of remarkable. When you create the right conditions for fermentation, you're cultivating lactobacillus bacteria, the same beneficial organisms found in yogurt, sauerkraut, and kimchi. These bacteria produce lactic acid as they work, which lowers the pH of your organic materials and creates an environment where putrefying bacteria simply cannot survive. This is why properly fermented materials don't produce that nauseating rot smell. They develop a slightly sweet pickled aroma instead, if they produce any noticeable odor at all. The fermentation process also generates enzymes and organic acids that make nutrients more bioavailable to plants, essentially pre-digesting the organic matter so your garden can immediately access the nutrition locked within. What fermented solids deliver to your garden is substantially different from what traditional compost provides. While compost is certainly valuable, much of its nitrogen content gets lost to the atmosphere during the hot aerobic decomposition process. Fermented materials, by contrast, retain nearly all of their original nutrients because the anaerobic process doesn't generate the same heat or gaseous losses. You're also getting a completely different microbial community, one rich in lactic acid bacteria, yeasts, and beneficial microorganisms that continue working in your soil long after application. These microbes don't just feed your plants, they actively improve soil structure, suppress pathogens, and enhance your garden's overall biological activity in ways that traditional compost simply cannot match. Beyond the pile, there are actually some really practical applications you can try out. Creating fermented solids in your home garden is surprisingly accessible, with methods ranging from the well-known Bokashi system to simple trench fermentation that, honestly, requires nothing more than a shovel and some patience. The Bokashi method, which originated in Japan, involves layering kitchen scraps in an airtight container with a special inoculant containing effective microorganisms. Every few days you add a new layer of scraps, sprinkle the inoculant over them, press down to remove air pockets, and seal the container again. Within about 2 weeks your kitchen waste has fermented into a pre-compost material that can be buried directly in your garden beds, where it completes its transformation into rich, plant-available nutrients within just a few more weeks. Trench fermentation offers an even simpler approach that eliminates the need for any containers or special equipment. The process is beautifully straightforward. Dig a trench in your garden bed, fill it with kitchen scraps or other organic materials, cover it completely with soil, and, well, just walk away. The buried organic matter ferments naturally in the oxygen-poor environment underground, breaking down into nutrients that feed your plants directly from below. This method works particularly well in areas where you'll be planting heavy feeders like tomatoes, squash, or corn in the coming season. For material preparation, success with fermented solids comes down to understanding a few key principles. Your organic materials should be chopped into smaller pieces to speed the fermentation process, though they don't need to be as carefully balanced as traditional compost requires. You want enough moisture so materials are damp but not soaking wet. Think of a wrung-out sponge as your target consistency. The exclusion of oxygen is critical, which is why pressing down materials in Bokashi buckets or ensuring complete soil coverage in trench fermentation matters so much. And here's the beautiful part for urban gardeners. Because properly managed fermentation doesn't produce offensive odors or attract pests, you can keep a Bokashi bucket right in your kitchen or create fermentation trenches in even the smallest garden spaces without bothering neighbors or inviting unwanted visitors. Knowing when your fermented solids are ready to nourish your plants requires understanding the signs of successful fermentation. With Bokashi, you're looking for materials that have maintained their original shape but have developed a white mold on the surface. This isn't the bad kind of mold, but rather beneficial microorganisms doing their work. The mixture should smell pickled or slightly sweet, definitely not rotten or putrid. Application techniques vary depending on what you've created and where you're using it. Fresh Bokashi pre-compost is still quite acidic and active with microorganisms, so it shouldn't be placed in direct contact with plant roots. Instead, bury it in trenches at least 6 inches away from established plants, or dig it into beds where you plan to plant in 3 to 4 weeks. The beauty of this waiting period is that the fermented materials complete their breakdown underground, releasing nutrients exactly where your plant's roots will soon be reaching. The environmental implications of shifting from traditional composting to fermented solids extend far beyond your backyard garden. When organic matter ferments anaerobically under controlled conditions, it produces minimal methane and captures nutrients that would otherwise be lost to the atmosphere. This means you're not just creating fertility for your garden, you're actually sequestering carbon and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions associated with organic waste decomposition. The cost savings and resource independence that fermented solids provide make this approach accessible to virtually every gardener, regardless of budget. You're transforming kitchen scraps and garden waste that would otherwise go to landfills into valuable soil amendments without purchasing expensive compost, fertilizers, or soil conditioners. The initial investment in a Bokashi bucket or inoculant is minimal, and trench fermentation costs absolutely nothing beyond your time. Now it's your turn to join this soil revolution. Start experimenting with fermented solids in your own garden, whether through Bokashi, trench fermentation, or other anaerobic methods that work for your space and situation. Document your journey, pay attention to how your plants respond, and don't be afraid to adapt these techniques to your specific conditions. The future of gardening isn't about following rigid rules, it's about understanding principles and applying them creatively to build living, thriving soil ecosystems. If you found this guide valuable, subscribe to the Living Soil Lab for more groundbreaking approaches to regenerative gardening, and share this video with fellow gardeners who are ready to transform their relationship with soil. Together, we're not just growing better gardens, we're cultivating a more sustainable future, one fermented bucket at a time.